My name is Corliss Wynne, and I am 71 years old. I have never been good at sleeping before important days. Numbers used to steady me back when I worked as an accountant, rows and columns that behaved if you treated them right. But families are not spreadsheets. They never balance the way you hope they will. The highway from Asheville to Savannah stretched out in long ribbons of wet black. My wipers clicked in rhythm with the thought that kept circling back. Kira is getting married. My only daughter. I whispered her name each time the road turned. I had packed carefully a small overnight bag, a linen dress that never wrinkled, and a wooden box wrapped in an old wool shawl. Inside the box were 3 heirloom brooches and a folded recipe written in my mother's hand. Gifts meant for the engagement dinner. By the time I passed the Savannah city limit sign, the horizon was still gray, heavy with salt air. I pulled over at a gas station to wash my face and practice my smile in the mirror. I rehearsed what I would say when I saw her, maybe something light. "You look radiant, sweetheart." Or maybe I would use Thomas's old toast, the one he used at every family milestone, to love that remembers where it began. The streets near Kira's neighborhood were quiet. I parked under the magnolia tree that used to drop blossoms on her first car. Her house looked larger than I remembered. The new shutters painted the same color as fog. I rang the bell and waited. When the door opened, Kira stood there in yesterday's makeup. Her hair pulled into a careless knot. She blinked once before saying, almost puzzled, "Oh, we had it yesterday. You should have called." For a moment, I thought I'd misheard. The porch light hummed above us, the kind of sound you notice only when nothing else moves. Behind her, laughter drifted from another room. I felt the wooden box tilt slightly in my hands, heavier than it should have been. Kira stepped aside but did not invite me in. I nodded, though I could not yet make my mouth form words. Then I turned back down the walkway, past the magnolia tree, toward the car that still smelled faintly of home. The motel sign flickered in and out like a heartbeat, red and tired against the dark. I parked under it, the hum of the engine fading into the sound of crickets and distant traffic. My hands ached from the drive. But I didn't reach for the box beside me right away. I just sat there, watching my reflection in the windshield, a woman who had once believed showing up was enough. The clerk at the front desk didn't ask questions. He handed me a key attached to a plastic tag and pointed down the hall. The room smelled faintly of bleach and rain. I turned on the bedside lamp, its yellow glow soft and unsteady, then placed the wooden box on the quilted bedspread as if it were something alive. For a long time, I only looked at it. The grain of the wood was darkened from years of polishing, the hinges slightly loose. When I finally lifted the lid, the scent of cedar and old perfume drifted up my mother's perfume. Inside lay 3 small brooches, a silver leaf, a gold lark, and one shaped like a compass rose. Beneath them rested a folded recipe card in my mother's careful handwriting, the ink fading at the corners. Under the card was a long envelope, yellowed but neatly sealed. I knew what it was before I opened it, the savings bond I had purchased in Kira's name when she graduated college. I had always told myself it would help her begin her own family someday. I traced the edge of the paper, remembering the words my mother used to say, "You give so people remember to give back." But somewhere along the way, that memory had bent into something else. Giving had become expected, not remembered. The rain outside thickened, drumming softly against the glass. I placed the bond back inside, closed the lid, and rested my palm on top. The wood felt cool beneath my hand. "I remember everything," I whispered, and for the first time that night, the silence felt like mine. Morning light slipped through the thin motel curtains, dull and pale. I woke before the alarm. Not from rest, but from habit. The wooden box still sat on the dresser where I'd left it, untouched since the night before. I brewed the small packet of coffee provided in the room, the taste bitter and flat. then opened my phone for the first time since I had left Asheville. The first thing that appeared was Kira's post. A long table covered in candles and white roses. Laughter caught midair, a caption written in her voice light. Casual, thoughtless, just family. Her fiancé, Landon, sat at the head of the table beside his parents, both of them glowing under the string lights. In every photo, the same faces repeated Landon's cousins, his sisters, his college friends. I scrolled slowly, looking for even a trace of myself. There was none. It wasn't an oversight. It was editing, the kind done quietly, with confidence that no one would call it cruel. My phone buzzed. A message from Kira. Hope you're not mad. Mom, we figured you'd be tired from the drive. I read it 3 times. The polite guilt sewn neatly into the words. Then I pressed the side button and let the screen go dark. By afternoon, I was back home in Asheville. The house greeted me with its stillness, the kind of quiet that used to comfort me. I unpacked slowly, washed the travel mug, folded the shawl, and placed the wooden box back in its drawer. The day stretched long and soundless. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table and printed one of Kira's photos. I took a pair of small sewing scissors from the drawer, the same kind my mother used for embroidery, and cut around my absent place at the table. The space where I should have been looked almost graceful in its emptiness. I pinned the picture to the refrigerator with a single magnet and stood back. The gap in the image didn't ache the way I expected. It looked honest. 3 days passed without a word. The refrigerator hummed softly in the quiet kitchen. The photo still pinned in place. I spent the mornings tending to small things, watering the ferns, sorting mail, folding linens that didn't need folding. I had almost begun to enjoy the silence when the phone rang. Kira's name glowed on the screen. I hesitated before answering. Her voice came bright and hurried, the kind she used when she wanted something softened before it landed. Hey, Mom, your card failed. I tried to pay the caterer's deposit, and it got declined. Did you forget to pay? Her tone carried no malice, only expectation. As if forgetting would be the most natural thing for me to do, I looked out the window, watching a sparrow hop along the railing, and let her question sit there between us. No, I said. I didn't forget. There was a pause. Well, maybe it's just the bank being weird. They said it was the supplementary account. The one linked to yours, it isn't the bank, I said. My voice surprised me calm, almost weightless. That card doesn't work anymore. What do you mean, I mean? I said slowly. I remember everything. Another silence. This one sharper. I could hear her exhale, then the small click as the call ended. I set the phone down and reached for the folder I kept in the desk drawer. Inside were my account papers, clipped and ordered. I dialed the bank's number and waited through the recorded voice, pressing the numbers carefully, listening to each confirmation. When the representative asked if I wanted to cancel the supplementary card permanently, I said yes. She asked if I wanted to issue a new one. I said no. When it was done, I placed the phone beside the folder and sat back in my chair, my shoulders lowered, the way a tight thread finally unwinds. Outside, the late sun spread over the kitchen tiles. Soft and golden, the house was still. I felt something steady settle in me, not pride, not anger. Something quieter, a kind of balance I hadn't known in years. I didn't need to explain a single thing. That night I couldn't sleep. The quiet didn't soothe me anymore. It kept me awake. I lay staring at the ceiling until the clock passed midnight, then rose and switched on the lamp above my desk. The surface was clean except for a few bills, a calculator, and a folder I hadn't opened in years. I began pulling out what I could find: receipts folded into old envelopes, printed transfers from my online banking years ago, small notes scribbled on the backs of grocery lists. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, only that I needed to see it laid out in front of me. Tuition payments from when Kira went back to finish her master's degree, The rent I covered for her first apartment in Charleston. The check for the down payment on the house she now lived in with Landon. Wedding deposits. I'd placed months before they even set a date. I stacked them by year, then opened my laptop and created a new spreadsheet. At the top, in plain black letters, I typed, "Unpaid kindness." The phrase looked strange on the screen, too formal for what it really meant, but it felt right. I entered each figure carefully, pausing after every few lines. Some were small textbook reimbursements, medical bills. Others were larger, $12,000 for the engagement ring when Landon's business fell short. $18,000 when their roof collapsed after the storm 2 summers ago. My husband's voice echoed faintly in my memory, warm and steady. Don't mistake generosity for obligation. Corliss, love doesn't need a receipt, but sometimes it deserves one. When the last number was entered, I stared at the total, $82,000. 10 years of giving that had slipped through my hands like water. I read the figure twice, then 3 times, until it no longer shocked me. I saved the file and printed 1 copy. The paper came out warm, curling slightly at the edges. I placed it in the same drawer as the wooden box, beside the brooches and the recipe. It didn't feel bitter, only necessary, like balancing an account that had been open too long. For the first time in a while, I turned off the light and slept through the night. The Asheville Public Library had always been a quiet comfort to me. I used to go there with Thomas on rainy Sundays, both of us pretending to read while watching people pass between the shelves. I hadn't stepped inside in almost 2 years. Not since the arthritis in my hands made holding books harder. But that morning, I went straight through the glass doors, down the wide staircase to the basement where the community help desks were. A sign taped to the wall read, "Legal Aid, Thursdays, 10 to 2. Behind the folding table sat a woman with silver hair pulled into a low braid and half-moon glasses perched at the edge of her nose. Her name tag read, Marta Ellison. She looked up when I approached, her smile calm but curious. I told her I had some documents that needed reviewing. She gestured for me to sit and asked me to tell her what I had. From my folder, I pulled the spreadsheet, the receipts, and finally, an old envelope with a folded form I had nearly forgotten about. Marta adjusted her glasses and read quietly for several minutes. Then she tapped the paper with her pen. "This one here, it's a power of attorney form," she said. "Signed about 6 years ago." I nodded. Kira had asked me to sign it. She said it was just in case something ever happened. I didn't think much of it. Marta's expression softened. "It's still active," she said. "It means she could act on your behalf, financially, if she chose to. You can revoke it today if you'd like. I can help you fill out the form." I felt my breath slow. She slid a clean sheet toward me, and I wrote my name carefully, the pen steady in my hand. When it was done, she notarized it, stamped it, and handed me a copy. "You keep this one," she said. "This is the version that counts." I folded the paper and placed it inside my folder. My name, at the top in bold print, looked unfamiliar, like something I had earned back without realizing it. Then I thanked her, tucked the folder under my arm, and stepped into the bright daylight waiting above the stairs. A week after my visit to the library, Kira called. Her voice was light, as if nothing had ever happened. "We thought maybe we could do a little makeup dinner," she said. "Just you, me, and Landon to smooth things out before the wedding." I agreed without hesitation. I wanted to see her. But more than that, I wanted to see how she looked at me now that the ground between us had shifted. The restaurant she chose sat near the river, all glass windows and polished silverware, the kind of place that pretended to be simple but wasn't. When I walked in, Kira waved from a corner booth. She looked radiant in a pale dress, her hair smooth and shining. Landon stood to greet me, his hand warm but perfunctory. "It's good to see you." "Mrs. Wynne," he said. We were just talking about how different money was handled back in your day. Real old money habits, holding on to every check stub, every receipt. Kira says you're still keeping ledgers. He smiled as if it were a quaint joke. Kira laughed softly, eyes flicking to mine for permission to keep laughing. I gave her none. I unfolded my napkin and placed it on my lap. Dinner moved slowly, a parade of polite conversation about caterers and flower arrangements. I listened more than I spoke, nodding at the right times. When the waiter finally placed the check between us, Kira reached for it, then paused. "Why don't you get this one?" "Mom," she said lightly, sliding the small folder across the table. I opened it, scanned the total, and placed 2 20s exactly my portion for my meal and coffee. Beneath the money, I slipped a single folded page. "Thank you for inviting me," I said. Kira blinked. "What's that?" "Just something I thought you should have." Then I stood, buttoned my coat, and left before they unfolded it. Later, I imagined the two of them staring at the paper, the header that read "Unpaid Kindness," the long list of dates and amounts beneath, a record, not of debt, but of everything I had already given. The call came the next morning. Sharp and early. I had been sitting by the window with a cup of tea, watching low clouds gather over the mountains. When I saw Kira's name flash across the screen, I let it ring once before answering. Her voice cracked through the line, brittle and impatient. What was that supposed to be? "Mom, that list. You're ruining the mood before the wedding. Landon thinks it was cruel. I think it was unnecessary." I held the phone loosely. "You asked me to dinner," I said. "I brought what belonged to me. You didn't have to embarrass us." "I didn't say a word," I replied. There was a hiss of silence. The faint sound of traffic bled through the line. "You've changed," she said finally. "You used to help without keeping score." I let her words settle, calm as the air before rain. Respect isn't an inheritance. Kira, it's earned. She made a sound between a sigh and a laugh. "I don't even know what that means anymore." "Maybe that's the problem," I said quietly. The connection stuttered. A small burst of static, then went dead. I didn't call back. After setting the phone down, I opened the drawer where my legal folder rested. The revocation form from the library was still on top, stamped and clean. I took out a pen and a notepad, writing a few new tasks in my neat handwriting. Call attorney, update will, remove emergency contact. By noon, I had finished all 3. The lawyer's office confirmed the changes without question. When I ended the final call, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. Outside, thunder rolled down from the ridge. A slow, steady growl that vibrated through the walls. The air thickened with the smell of rain. I closed the windows, turned off the phone, and sat for a long time in the fading light. The storm finally broke, steady and sure, and I let it come. 2 days after the storm, I drove across town to see Nadia. She was my late sister's goddaughter, a nurse who had once cared for me after my hip surgery. We had stayed loosely in touch, exchanging cards at Christmas and brief calls every few months. She was the kind of woman who never raised her voice, but her presence filled a room with steadiness. When she opened the door, she smiled with genuine warmth. "You didn't call ahead," she said, taking my coat. I didn't want to give myself time to change my mind. Her small kitchen smelled of lemon soap and fresh bread. We sat at the table while she poured tea, the steam rising between us like a curtain waiting to lift. I reached into my bag and placed the wooden box in front of me. The lid creaked softly as I opened it. Inside were the 3 brooches and the folded recipe card. I took out the gold lark pin and set it beside Nadia's cup. "This one belonged to my mother," I said. "She used to wear it on her apron when she baked. She said it made her feel braver when life got heavy." Nadia's hand hovered above it, hesitant. "Corliss, I can't." "You can," I said. "Legacy isn't about who shares your blood. It's about who keeps something safe. You've always done that. Her eyes glistened. But she didn't argue again. I slid the recipe card across the table next. My mother's handwriting still crisp despite the years. She called it her Sunday bread. I said, it kept our house smelling like forgiveness. We drank our tea in comfortable silence after that. Before leaving, I told her about the small scholarship I had started at the community college, the Marjorie Wynne Culinary Grant, for students learning traditional baking. Just enough to buy someone their first set of pans, I said. Nadia held the pin against her sweater, smiling through tears. Your mother would be proud. I think she'd be relieved, I said. It finally found the right hands. The morning of Kira's wedding came clear and cold, the kind of autumn day that carries both sharpness and calm. I drove to the church alone. Following the line of cars that curved through the old part of town, the building was small and white, trimmed with ivy that had begun to turn red. Bells rang softly in the distance as guests gathered under the oak trees. Inside, I took a seat near the back, beside an older couple I didn't know. The pews filled quickly, the air thick with perfume and murmured greetings. When Kira entered, the room rose around her. She looked radiant, her gown simple and modern, her smile composed. For a moment, I let myself feel what every mother hopes to feel, that fleeting, aching pride that no wound can fully erase. The ceremony was brief. Landon's parents read a blessing, and Kira's voice trembled slightly when she repeated her vows. No one mentioned me, but that no longer mattered. I didn't come to be mentioned. I came to witness something close, even if it was no longer mine. Afterward, people gathered outside for photographs. When the photographer called for family only, I felt a few eyes turn my way. I stepped aside without hesitation and joined a small group of guests near the steps. The air was crisp, the light soft. Kira glanced toward me once, her expression unreadable. I smiled and gave a small nod. Then she turned back to the camera. By dusk, I was home. The house greeted me in its usual stillness, the quiet kind that no longer felt empty. On the porch, I knelt beside the lamppost and unwrapped the brass plaque I had ordered weeks ago. The words were simple, engraved in a steady hand. Welcome by respect. I mounted it with care, tightened each screw, and stood back. The metal caught the last traces of daylight. When I switched the light on, a soft glow spilled over the driveway, gentle as breath. I stayed there for a while, letting the quiet fold around me. Then I whispered into the fading air, I remember everything, and I remember who I am.